Hello, everybody. Thank you for your continued love and support when it comes to Dungeon of Deadly Delights. I'm, of course, one of your hosts, Rob DiLauro, and with me, as always, is Mr. Tommy McLoughlin. And, of course, we've got our new teammate, Holly of Famous Monsters of Filmland.
We're going to be talking about classic Wolfen all the way up to American Werewolf and the Howling, to more recent classics, even 80s TV shows, maybe, and also just werewolf lore in general, like where they came from and you know, the shape-shifting transformation stuff. We go all over the place with this one.
Werewolves was my life. I mean, as a kid growing up, I was the kid, you know, jumping up on the dumpster, screaming at the moon. So it's deep inside of my craziness. We'll be covering just about everything, and then hopefully a little bit of ideas about where the future of all this might go.
Please like and subscribe on the HorrorWeb YouTube channel. If you're a fan of werewolves, it's going to be a hell of a time. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dungeon of Deadly Delights. I am one of your hosts, Rob DiLauro, and of course, with me as always is Mr. Tommy McLoughlin, sitting there looking like he's getting ready to.
I'm sorry.
Tommy, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. How about
Excellent.
you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. And of course, as promised, you know, unfortunately, we said, you know, Brittany couldn't be part of our crew anymore, but I think we found a very solid puzzle piece in Holly. So, Holly, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody again, if you would, please.
Yeah, sure. Hello, I'm Holly. I'm an editor of Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, and I also write comic books. So, monsters are my business, as they say, or as I say. I don't know
not just comic books. You're kind of like, you know, you're not giving them the I don't know, you're not giving yourself the proper pat on the back, but this is actually a comic book that you were working on with Steve Niles. Am I correct on that?
The first art was with Steve. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Monster World is the title, and right now we're doing the second series, Monster World: The Golden Age.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's absolutely incredible. I mean, Steve Niles is nobody to sneeze at. I've always loved that dude. And
he's a great dude. We've been friends since I first moved to LA, and he's been awesome.
Yeah, and just the fact that he was able to craft something. I know we're talking about werewolves tonight, but like he was able to craft something like 30 Days of Night. Like, that guy is brilliant. He's brilliant. So, shout out to Steve Niles.
Thanks,
all right. So we're going to talk about our topic tonight, and you know, we are stepping obviously into the Halloween season, and you know, there's so many things to talk about in regards to, like, you know, different monsters that we love and things we're obviously passionate about when it comes to different subgenres and whatnot. But Holly brought one to our attention. That's why Tommy is sitting in the chair that he is sitting in right now, and why she is rocking the shirt that she is wearing right now.
Werewolves, American Werewolf, woohoo!
There we go. Now, Holly, go ahead and introduce our topic for tonight, because this was actually your idea. We think it's an awesome one, and can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you asked me for suggestions on what we could talk about, and if there's one thing I have lots of opinions on in horror, it's werewolf. Mm-hmm. They've been an obsession of mine since I was a little kid. Wow. And I used to read. I read a whole bunch of books about them. I would buy like mythology of werewolves and all that stuff. So, yeah, that being said, to me, there is a vast difference between werewolves and wolfmen.
Or like dogmen?
Wolfmen.
Wolfmen. Okay.
Wolfmen versus werewolves, which is interesting to me because for a while, back like in the classic era, you could only do wolfmen because that was like the extent of their makeup abilities and stuff.
Sure.
You know?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, and then, you know, you got into the modern era. I mean, to me, American Werewolf is the first movie where I'd say that's a werewolf. Like that's, and that's awesome. And I, yeah, I just love the film. But yeah, I mean, not to say Wolfmen aren't awesome. It's just, to me, there's a distinct dichotomy between the two. Like there are two categories of werewolf movie.
But even though there isn't technically a wide net when it comes to werewolf films, like in the genre, because there isn't a lot, to be quite honest with you. And there's a good selection to talk about, but it always felt to me like, American Werewolf, speaking about that, is basically like, it's like, using banana as a safe word during sex or something. Just the easiest thing to throw out there. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the first one that people can go to, like American Werewolf in London, which I adore. But, like, if we're going to really get into the meat and potatoes of this conversation, I mean, there's so much more to talk about than just American Werewolf. And obviously, there's a lot we can say about that movie in particular. But
well, the reason I brought it up is because to me, that and The Howling, both of which came out in '81, that was like a shift in the era of like werewolves on film, whereas they sort of became less like the Wolfmen and more like the actual wolf head.
Mm-hmm. Didn't they both come out in '81? Is that true?
Same year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the same year, and actually, there was this weird thing that was, obviously there's a lot of myth and controversy and stuff when it comes to film, but like one of the truths that was kind of like kind of mixed up was that Rick Baker and Rob Bottin were like at odds with each other. When it comes to him working on that and him working on The Howling, which is totally untrue. Rick Baker actually sent Rob Bottin to work on The Howling, and you know what I mean, and get his own crew. So there was no opposition there, as far as I.
They're just both amazing. So,
but it was like the same thing that we heard about, Tobe Hooper's on the set of Poltergeist, and all of a sudden, Mr. Know-It-All comes in, Spielberg, and says, hey, I think you should do this. And then he supposedly took that over too, which I think is bullshit also. There's a lot of Tobe Hooper and Poltergeist. So anyway, so to get off the beaten path here, Holly, aside from American Werewolf in London, do you want to start us off with something that maybe people don't really know about and should, or?
Well, I mean, obviously there've been a whole bunch of low budget werewolf films like schlock fests, where it's just like the excuse is just to have a werewolf on screen, which is fine. I totally appreciate that. And I watch them anyway because I love seeing werewolves on screen. But as far as quality and good werewolf design and badassery and just an ultimate, basically a must-see for werewolf fans is Dog Soldiers. Neil Larson's Dog Soldiers from 2002. It hits all the right buttons for a werewolf movie. You've got all the, they're defending a house in the woods and running through the woods, and it's just, and the werewolf design is amazing.
And less is more in there too, which is so great.
Sorry?
Less is more. Neil Marshall really lets you not linger on these things. They really much more scary, which is, again, that's the old rule. Less is more.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's my must see for werewolf fans if you haven't seen it.
Well, the thing I love about that particular design is that they decided to put those werewolves on stilts, which was pretty incredible looking.
Well, I think it helped. I think it helped with how imposing they appear in the film because they're so tall. Yeah. It's sort of like that like that House of Secrets effect where it's like something tall is hanging over you like that. I think that's really effective in a horror film as well. Absolutely.
And also the other great thing about that movie is that everybody that's in it, Sean Pertwee, that entire crew of people that's in that that list of actors is so easy to they're not just fodder for the sake of fodder. Those guys they're funny. There's a lot of comedy in that movie. They're very likable to a certain degree. And I can't remember the lead actress's name in that movie, but when she finally turns and you realize it's the family, man, that is one hell of a twist that works very, very well.
I love it.
Yeah, Dog Soldiers is 100%. Tommy,
Yeah,
I know you got a lot of things in your brain, man. So go ahead, drop it.
My brain, and then of course my usual. I had to do a little for years and all that stuff because it all kind of mushes together. But obviously, being a hardcore Wolfman and Werewolf of London and all these things that you could see on TV. When I was 11, I saw Curse of the Werewolf.
The Hammer film,
in that incredible hammer color. I think it was Terrence Fisher was the director on the thing. And it just the fact that he was gray and he was in color and he was big. And I mean, that really stuck in my head for a long time is that's the definitive new, Wolfman. Cause I guess that would, in your way of looking at it, that's more of a Wolfman, right, Holly? Than a.
Well, that's just how I look at it. I mean, back then, of course, that was a werewolf because nobody put wolf heads on screen because we didn't have effects. So.
But and then just the whole fact, everything comes from Germany, right? I mean, all these early myths and stuff from these guys that either were cannibals and attacked and chewed on people and stuff, and then it was going around that these were wolves. No, this was a man. I saw him transform. And then of course it was a great excuse to do witch hunting too. It's the other side of the witch hunts were the werewolf hunts. Killing, going after these guys that had to be, satanic in some way, shape, or form. But I think for the rest of us, there was something kind of sexy, sort of, just that earthy quality of an animal, and being able to run out as a boy, run after somebody and have them, run, just empowered you so much, as opposed to Dracula's walk or the mummies, of course, moving like this. There was something great about the Wolfman that just, to me was just a perfect, boyhood hero.
Well, I never really thought anything sexual about werewolves, except maybe when I saw Michelle Pfeiffer, which actually brings me to my movie that I want to bring to the proceedings. And really simple makeup design, and obviously it's just Jack Nicholson doing a Jack Nicholson impression. But I was really, really I loved Wolf when I first saw that movie. Yeah. There was just certain things about it. It was kind of like this like boardroom drama, blended with this whole supernatural aspect. But the main thing that I loved about it was just, that it was simple, and, Jack Nicholson didn't have to wear this big heavy wolf costume or anything. And his, just his inflections and everything about him was just so perfect for all those, makeups, which I think were Rick Baker, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember. Or Stan Winston, one of the two. It's usually
look that up.
It's usually one of the OGs that does that, but it's very, even if it is one of those guys, they're usually, into making these really, intense, beautifully crafted wolf costumes, when honestly all they did was put just a different brow on Jack, and gave him some fangs, and he just ran around and went crazy. And just the fact that
here's an interesting trivia thing. If you go back 1935 with the Werewolf of London, Henry Hull, who played the werewolf, if you remember that, had that same kind of makeup. And Jack Pierce, who also did the Wolfman, the Lon Chaney one, he wanted to make his whole face, hairy, but Henry Hull had an ego, and he goes, no, you got to see the actor. So we need to make it simple, which is very much what the Jack Nicholson thing is, is very much you get to see it's Jack. And yet,
yeah, that's important too, especially with Jack, when you're selling a movie on a headlining actor, you can't really cover the actor up or it's not going to work.
Yeah. And, when they were going through the whole situation of what he's actually doing, it, it kind of played into, obviously things that are coming out of the woodwork now when it comes to just male machismo in the workplace and all that stuff, just him marking his territory and pissing on fucking James Spader's shoes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's the moment of the movie I was going to mention, actually.
Yeah, just that male mentality in the workplace and stuff, and it really just played on, you know, like a lot of ideals that we're talking about now. But you know, like Tommy was saying, I think the thing I loved about it the most is that it kind of
It was
definitely
Rick
played
Baker.
in. Oh, was Rick Baker?
Yep.
Awesome.
There you go.
Good call.
So you got him doing American Werewolf in London. He's doing this massive, beautiful werewolf, and then all of a sudden he's just like, I'm just gonna do some simple work here on Jack, and it all works. It's all effective, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And plus, I remember, I don't know if you remember the very end of that movie, but the scene where they kind of flash into, like, you know, where Michelle Pfeiffer's, like, you know, family lives and stuff, and then all of a sudden, like, you see her eyes turn yellow, and she kind of turns into a wolf. Like, just stuff like that in that movie, like, really just, like, hit home with me, especially, you know, because I was quite young when that movie came out when I first saw it. And
yeah, it was like 94, I think. 94.
Yeah, I think it was like 94, yeah. It was just a very effective movie for me as far as werewolves are concerned.
Well, going back to my sexual obsession, which of course I have to have one at my age. The Howling.
Well, sometimes, Tommy, I question if you are a werewolf or something.
But Howling, you know, I mean, that sex scene by the fire, and also just when the transformations were much more, you know, I mean, it definitely felt like he was about to have an orgasm, you know, and the way the faces bulged, and so very different. From
Parental advisory on this episode, kids. Go ahead, Tommy.
Some people clean, you know, who knows?
No children.
You might have Hallmark Hall of Fame, you know, posting this thing one day, you know. But it just, to me, there's just that animal thing that I thought they really, you know, did so well in the Howling.
Yeah, well, and that's also a really important thing about why people can be drawn to werewolves, is because, you know, the whole human animal, you know, hybrid thing, like everybody sort of wishes they could let loose and let the animal out every once in a while, you know, and werewolves, you know, get to do that.
Well, I was gonna just ask you guys that, like, what is your interpretation as far as, like, you know, the whole Lycan situation? Because obviously there's people that believe that these things actually exist. You could see it all over Google, you know, like, hey, you know, my deer, like, you know, or deer camera saw this and whatever. But I mean, honestly, I always thought of, like Tommy was saying, it was like werewolf is kind of a personification of, you know, like, you know, maybe for a good majority of people where they just feel buttoned down all the time, and they just, like, you know, they just want to let loose, you know. And I think it definitely has a lot to do with sexuality and all those different themes as far as, you know, just breaking free, you know, like breaking the chains of existence, you know.
And man versus nature, or like your instincts versus what society wants you to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what film I also, and because it's not even wolf man or werewolf, it's just pure wolf, is the movie Wolfen.
Oh yeah.
When I saw that, I mean, the atmosphere of that movie, the tone of it, you know, Albert Finney's performance, everything about that, and then to find out it's all sort of Native American based and stuff, I thought it was really fucking cool. I mean, I really still love that movie.
Agreed. Yeah, and I love the wolf cam, like when you're looking through their eyes.
Yeah.
That's a great film. It's not really a werewolf film, but it's a great.
Yeah, but it is, you know, it is about wolves, and I guess he transforms, isn't he, that character?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Clearly I need to watch it again.
I don't know. I think I was sperm when I first saw Wolfen. I couldn't tell you. Like,
oh yeah, that's an old one too. That's like 3 or something.
Yeah.
Man, the 80s were good to werewolves, weren't they?
Man. So yeah, Holly. What's next on your list as far as the Lycan movie?
Oh, I mean, it's funny because you use the term Lycan, which is obviously the term they used in the Underworld films, which are, you know, the classic cake. Well, now they're classic, even though they're not even 20 years old. But
well, hang on, let me put these on. Well, actually.
The Kate Beckinsale Werewolves versus Vampires films, which I like the first one. I never felt like they were really werewolves though. Like since they called them lichens in the film, it didn't feel like they were doing like an actual version of a werewolf. It felt like sort of their own thing, you know?
Yeah.
I enjoyed the first film, but
I think the fact that she's dating Pete Davidson scares me more than that fucking movie, honestly.
is she really?
Yeah.
Okay. No judging.
You know, as far as Underworld's concerned, I don't know. I think it's a great story. Like, you know, if you're, I don't know if you're just, for me, it just feels like it's just more of like, kind of like a starting point as far as like, you know, maybe a person that's not really into horror and can kind of like, you know, use this as a gateway or whatever. I mean, it's beautifully shot. It's a really entertaining story. There's some really great performances in it. And, you know, not to take anything away from Kate Beckinsale, but Celine is just like super fucking iconic. And you know, like that, I mean, to give the devil its due, man. Like, although I'm not a fan of the Underworld movies, I mean, they've been going for years and years and years. It has its own lore. And I mean, you got to give it that at least if you're not, you know, a fan. You know, so I do give it props for its endurance and, you know, like what it's able to do as far as like, you know, still having a loving fan base now to this very day, you know, and
yeah, absolutely.
Very
All right,
low.
I have a question for you guys. Has there been one good werewolf movie that had CGI for the transformations and all that stuff? Any of that shit ever worked?
I would have to say, I mean, you know, the guy did win an Academy Award for it. I would probably say the Wolfman would be Benicio del Toro. But the one issue that I did have with that was the CG.
Yeah.
It was kind of messy for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of felt to me like Benicio, as great of an actor as he is, it kind of felt like he was sleepwalking through that movie a little bit. Like he didn't want to do it or something. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think he was committed to wanting to be a monster. You know, there's certain actors that love, you could see it. They just love to play that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that same sense that it was a role that he was playing, and it wasn't so much that a passion. You know, my whole life wanting to play the Wolfman.
No, not at all. Not at all. You know, but
Anthony Hopkins, I mean, the way he approached it to me was, I don't know. There's something about Anthony Hopkins. It's like he can never do any wrong to me, but it's
no, he can't. Like even when he's like just going like full on ham, like he is just brilliant, you know. And
like
that brings up an interesting point, though. I think. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. Go ahead.
The fact that the transformation scene is so pivotal to a good werewolf film. I think the reason it is so pivotal is because you can't really do it well with CGI. It's like the moment when you're like, oh shit, this person's a werewolf.
Yeah.
You almost have to do it practically, and of course, you know, Rick Baker just sort of knocked it out of the park with American Werewolf. Actually, a really recent film I saw that I really enjoyed. I didn't really like the werewolf design, but the transformation scene is freaking great. Have you guys seen Late Phases?
No.
The one that it takes place in a retirement community. And it's about this old guy and his German Shepherd and a werewolf outbreak. And the werewolves, like I said, the design is kind of funky. Like they've got little weird cat ears and stuff. But the transformation scene is absolutely amazing. Like it's got like fallen fingernails off and like hair bursting everywhere. And it's great. It's great. So I really recommend that one too.
There's one series that we obviously have to bring up, and you know, like I'm very loyal to that series. Even the second one where people kind of go poo, 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 like that sucks, you know. But we do have to bring up Ginger Snaps.
Yeah.
I think, you know, as far as Ginger Snaps is concerned, I do love, you know, how it, you know, sort of like Jennifer's body kind of played into being a teenage girl, played into puberty, played into sexuality of a young woman, and all these different, you know, like tones and things, you know, to make a werewolf movie. And then of course, you know, like having two of probably the darkest, grimmest characters we've ever seen in those two sisters, man, they were just nutty. And like most amazing of ways. I mean, just like in the beginning where they're taking pictures of each other, like, committing suicide and all of that. I love that movie, but I also, we were talking about werewolf design, but the thing I really love about that is that, they really, like they swung for the fences when it came to that creature design. How it looked kind of, like when she became a werewolf, finally, it just kind of looks emaciated a little bit. And
it's really disturbing.
yeah, very, very spindly, almost like I don't want to say necessarily like a spider, but very, just very elongated and kind of stretched out,
And weirdly hairless as well.
Yes, and weirdly hairless, yeah. And of course, the werewolves got, a little bit better looking as, the series went on. And this is a really like, super, super fucking hot take, but I think part 3 is my favorite out of all of them. That's the one where they go back into history, and the two sisters are obviously part of that history, and it, has to do with they're in this whole like, fur trapping, compound, and I don't know if you guys have never seen Ginger Snaps. I think it's Ginger Snaps: The Beginning, I think it's called.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I think that's one of my favorites.
I saw the first one. I didn't see any of the other ones. The first one I really loved. I thought it was great.
Well, the second one was really interesting too, because it kind of plays on the fact that her sister is, she's using this poison plant, obviously to, prevent herself from becoming a werewolf like her sister. But, obviously everybody thinks she's doing drugs, like really heavy duty drugs. So she's in this rehab, with all these other girls and stuff. And, kind of like a Girl Interrupted vibe. And then there's this like really weird girl named Ghost that like, is just running around the facility. And, we're going to get into spoiler territory, but obviously they escape, and Ghost's plan, because she's a little psycho, is that she wants to trap these wolves in this house. So when people come for her to, like they're basically using these things as murder weapons. So 3 different movies, like completely in a row.
Yeah,
like
they shouldn't be called the same thing. Right.
No, they're all very, very different. Well, there's one that I wanted to bring up that's very, very effective to this very day, and I'm sure a lot of us love it. But what they did with like Monster Squad, for example, is exactly what you need to do. That movie has, like, honestly, like everybody says, like, I love Gary Oldman, I love Bela Lugosi, I love this, I love that. But his Dracula in that movie was the most vicious motherfucker I've ever seen as far as Dracula. He had no concern in the world whatsoever except for his ultimate goal, which is worldwide domination. I will fucking throw a stick of dynamite into that clubhouse and kill every kid in this fucking street if I need to. That dude was heavy duty dark. And, like just the creature design was perfect, especially when it comes, to the werewolf. And, obviously, oh God, I can't remember that actor's name, but he went off and did Fright Night 2, which I actually think is really a solid fucking movie. I think that's a great sequel that everybody should see. It's really hard to get for some reason. I don't know why. But, like you're just going back to basics, like you're not worrying about the money. You're not worrying about the star power. You're just focused on, like the way the design's going to work and, like, and that kind of thing. And,
well, speaking of going back to basics, I think it's also like, we just need a werewolf movie with kids, because when you're a kid, you're terrified of werewolves, and there's a reason that like movies like It and Stranger Things and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark all feature kids.
Yeah.
Because that's when we found stuff that was really scary, and a lot of the movies in the 80s did that, and I think we kind of went away from that for a while. But I think now people are realizing that when you're a kid, these things are scary. And if I could make a werewolf movie, it would the werewolf would be like killing kids.
Well, I was going to bring that up. I was going to bring that up too. And, this is obviously like a cult classic, and a lot of people praise it. I remember reading Cycle of the Werewolf. That's one of my favorite books from King. But like Corey Haim in Silver Bullet, and his sister, and the dynamic that they had, as far as their love for each other, and just their that's one of the best performances by Gary Busey by far, is in that movie. And and of course my man from Twin Peaks, playing the Reverend. Like that movie to me, like is so effective when it comes to just the way. I don't know. The werewolf kind of looks corny now because I did see it recently, like in the past like couple months, and I'm like, ooh, there's a couple times where it looks like really kind of not good. But I think like when you see the werewolf and just like there's little nuances that obviously like he lost his eye, so the eye was gone, and I don't know. I think Silver Bullet's highly effective when it comes to a werewolf film that endures.
That's a good one. And again, it has the main characters are kids.
Yes. Yeah. And not to get too much into it because we're getting out of our territory here, which is what we do here. But I think that's why Chapter 2 doesn't work for a lot of people, is because you're so invested in the Losers Club as a young group, and then when you see them as adults, like kind of the stakes are kind of gone or whatever, because like that innocence is gone. Like they're adults, they've fucked, they pay taxes, whatever. It's not the same thing. What I mean?
They pay taxes. You're an adult. How can you tell who's an adult? You pay taxes.
Our next show. That'll be our next one.
I'm just saying for some reason, like, it's like, people obviously, and they should be, like, when something happens to a child, they're really affected. When something happens to an animal, they're really affected. But, like, sometimes, like, I see people, like, when something happens to an adult and they're just like, oh, too fucking bad, like, just a whole different thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a difference between, like, being detached from watching the kids die and, like, remembering what it was like to be a kid when you were scared. Yeah. For me, that's why it works. Yeah. Just because like things terrified me, as werewolves terrified me. I couldn't even look. This is my first werewolf book. I couldn't even look at the cover of this for more than like 5 seconds because I was so scared of it.
Oh wow!
Like that's the kind of thing that I remember from being a fan as a kid, and I agree with you actually, Rob, that might be why Chapter 2 didn't work as well as number 1, because the kid camaraderie is sort of gone.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is when it comes to werewolf films, like obviously like, it plays into like, the hunger you have as an adult, like sexuality, and, you want to eat meat and you want to just go out and go crazy, but maybe you have to have that balance of innocence as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cause I mean, they were so quick to try to make it humorous or, somehow put the Wolfman or Frankenstein together. And we needed to take, as a kid, of course, we took it seriously, but you look at it now and it's sort of like, okay, but it's nostalgic, it's wonderful. But then all the things that they had to do to try to, hold on to old monsters, but they needed to put some sort of comic, spin on it. And I would love to be able to see some indie guy come out of nowhere and create something that a studio would pick up and put out there mainstream that really, brought us back into the werewolf, the wolf.
I'm still hoping and praying for a rehash of Werewolf: The Legend Continues, dude. I'm holding my fingers. Just saying.
Television at its finest.
All right, well, let's talk about the granddaddies of all of them, obviously, and obviously these are going to come up. But you've got, like the Howling on one side. It's kind of like it's like WrestleMania. You got the Howling on one side, and you've got American Werewolf on this side. Which one do you guys prefer as far as story, as far as just like direction, special effects? I mean, those two are obviously they're going to contend with each other like as long as we exist on this planet. But
yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty firmly team American Werewolf when it comes to that. Just not for a variety of reasons. It does pepper in humor, but I think in that movie it works. Whereas the Howling seems to rely more on like transgressive ideas and like super forbidden adult stuff, and whereas American Werewolf is just kind of goofy at times. But and also like the wolf design, I love it. It's still the only werewolf on film that's ever I've actually find scary.
Yeah. Tommy, what about you? I mean, I think you're in the American Werewolf camp, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm with her on that one too. As much as I love Joe Dante's work and what he did in there, and there's some scenes that are just classic, it had the problem that they kept making sequels and kept diminishing, the whole series, or the whole thing by turning it into a series. But just some, you know, Joe always to me is kind of winking at us because he's such a, you know, film guy, and his movies all feel like kind of movies where, you know, John of course likes the wide frame and playing things out sort of realistically. And I remember at one point he had talked about, you know, his favorite scene in that movie is the thing where he's the guy falls in the escalator in the tube, and he's going up and he's sitting there, and then way at the bottom of the frame you just start to see the werewolf come in. And he said that was scary to him, you know, because you didn't really get to see, because he ended up regretting that you saw so much of the werewolf through that movie. You kind of started to get used to it. You started to, you know, oh, wait a minute, does that look real, or does that look real? It's just, again, that same problem that, you know, you love the effects, and Rick Baker did such a great job. You want to hold on them as long as you can. But the truth is, it's so much better like Dog Soldiers did. You know, get in, get out, you know, get the shot, get the hell out.
Yep.
Well, you wanted to talk about opposition on the show, and you're going to get some, because obviously, you guys know, listen, I love American Werewolf in London, obviously. I mean, for all the same reasons that people love it. Naked Guy Stole My Balloons and all that shit. But to me, like, the Howling was always better simply because, like, it was more terrifying to me that there was a serial killer running around, Eddie Quist, that, like, you know, is like a Ted Bundy who just happens to be one of the most vicious creatures that you could possibly turn into. That was amazing just in that regard. And also, you know, and of course, you know, like you said, you know, it gets very campy at times and stuff like that. And, you know, Joe definitely has, you know, like the ability to wink at everybody. But, you know, I love those winks. The fact that, you know, like there was characters that were named after past werewolf movies, that, you know, there's all these different like Easter eggs within. I think Joe Dante was the Easter egg guy even before we had Easter eggs.
Yeah, no, Joe's amazing. He's great.
Yeah. The only thing that really bugged me about that movie, as far as my love for it, is I'm still, for the life of me, and I've interviewed her before, why did Dee Wallace turn into a fucking Sharpay at the end of that movie?
It was in her contract.
That's the only question I have as far as American or the Howling, is why she turned into a puppy at the end of that movie. I just what?
Why not? Yeah, it was the 80s. Throw anything at the screen.
Yeah, it was like, I think obviously he was trying to make a sequel or whatever, because, like, you know, we're looking at these wolves and, you know, they're big and they're whatever, and then all of a sudden she turns into this like weird like dog creature like while she's doing the news, and you're like, what is this? Like, what? No, there were some really great performances in that, and you know, there was a lot of things that he just took some really seriously deep swings at, you know, when it comes to like animation. There's a scene where, like, you know, it's obvious, like, you know, where the wolves are, like, you know, at a bonfire and they're howling, that they're animated. Like, he was using like cell animation for that particular scene. And, you know, just like a lot of Joe Dante's movies, it just, like, for me, had a lot more of a punk rock edge to it than, and Joe Dante is not even remotely a punk rock guy whatsoever. You know what I mean? He has that feeling in him. You know what I mean? Like, he has just that ability to just kind of like throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And I think that's why I love The Howling a little bit more than American Werewolf. So, like, there is quite a bit of werewolf stuff to chew through, you know, when it comes to like film. I wish there was more, and obviously there isn't more. What's that?
My dog howling to a siren.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. All right.
That was appropriate.
Well, that's a good way to end it.
Why the fuck can't you do that?
That's a good way to end it. So, guys, join us, you know, next time. Obviously, Holly. I mean, man, I'm sold, Tommy. Like, I think this is.
Love her.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Be sure to like, share. If you like the show, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Obviously, go to the HorrorWeb YouTube channel. You know, we love doing the shows, and of course, you know, we want to we want to get your support as much as possible. You know, when it comes to, you know, what we want to do with the future of the show and then our next plateaus and all that stuff. But for everyone here, I just want to say thank you. Have a great night, and we'll scare you later. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Cheers.